Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're going to explore CEO communication. Going beyond those typical press releases and earnings calls.
hmm
And we'll be using this CEO communication plan template as like our guide.
hmm
It's kind of like a blueprint for how leaders can communicate effectively.
Yeah.
So we'll see how they build trust, engage their teams, and even navigate this crazy business world we're in today.
Right.
And it's interesting because these principles aren't just for CEOs. They
Mhm.
really apply to anyone who wants to, communicate better, whether you're leading a team or even just like explaining a complex idea to your colleagues.
It's true. The ability to communicate effectively is so crucial no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump into the why of CEO communication. This template emphasizes that it's so much more than just sharing info.
Right.
It's about achieving these very specific objectives. Like, why is that so important?
Well, if you think about it, building trust and transparency,
Hmm.
those aren't just some feel-good concepts.
Hmm.
They actually have a real impact on employee engagement. They influence stakeholder relationships and ultimately affect a company's bottom line,
They do.
especially these days when information spreads so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
A CEO's communication can really make or break a company.
I was just thinking, that makes me think about how a CEO's words carry even more weight in an industry like finance, where trust is so important.
Absolutely. Imagine like a scenario where a financial firm's dealing with some market volatility.
Oh, yeah.
And if the CEO doesn't communicate effectively,
Hmm.
especially about the potential impact on investors,
Right?
it could totally erode confidence and have some serious consequences.
For sure.
Clear and consistent communication can really help to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like navigating those rough waters with transparency and just reassurance.
Exactly.
But just having the right message isn't enough, right? It
Yeah.
seems like knowing who you're speaking to is just as vital.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can have the most amazing message in the world, but if you're giving it to the wrong audience
Right.
or in a way that just doesn't resonate, it's going to fall flat.
Totally.
It's crucial to tailor both your message and how you're delivering it to each specific audience.
So how does a CEO effectively communicate to such different audiences, like, their employees versus their high net worth clients?
Yeah,
I mean, a town hall might work for one, but not the other, right?
exactly. A town hall is great for getting all the employees together,
Mm-hmm.
fostering a sense of community and communicating like internal changes.
Right.
But when you're dealing with high net worth clients, they might expect something more like personalized webinars
Yeah.
or even in-depth market analysis delivered like one-on-one.
Yeah, it's fascinating how you need to adjust not just the what, but the how.
For sure.
Okay, so let's dive into the message itself. The source talks about going beyond those, standard vision and mission statements.
Right.
What else should CEOs be communicating?
Well, one area that often gets overlooked is promoting company culture.
Oh,
In
interesting.
today's world, especially with the rise of remote work
Mm-hmm.
and everyone competing for talent, company culture is really what sets you apart.
Yeah,
It's about attracting and retaining top talent.
right.
And the CEO plays a huge role in shaping and communicating that culture.
So, how does a CEO effectively communicate company culture? It
Yeah.
seems like it's more than just writing a mission statement and calling it a day, right?
You're absolutely right. It has to be reflected in everything the company does,
Okay.
from their internal communications to how leadership behaves and even storytelling.
Oh, okay.
For example, CEOs can highlight employee achievements,
Uh-huh.
share stories about the company's impact, on the community, or actively participate in employee-led initiatives.
Yeah.
Those actions really show the company's values and make people feel like they belong.
Hmm.
And that resonates with both employees and potential recruits.
Those are great examples. It's about aligning actions with words to build that authentic culture.
Yeah,
Now let's talk about actually getting the message out there.
right.
The channels, we've got the usual suspects, like emails, town halls, press releases,
Yeah.
but what are some of the more unexpected or innovative channels that CEOs are using these days?
It's really interesting how CEOs are using social media, especially LinkedIn, to kind of establish themselves as thought leaders
Mm-hmm.
and engage with a wider audience.
Yeah.
It's become such a powerful platform for sharing insights,
Mm-hmm.
starting conversations, and just showcasing their expertise. They're
Right.
really using it to humanize their brands.
I've definitely seen that. It's so interesting how CEOs are using LinkedIn to share articles they've written,
Hmm.
or offer commentary on like industry trends or even just give you a glimpse into their daily routines.
Yeah.
It makes them seem more approachable and relatable,
Right.
which can be super powerful.
For sure.
I'm curious, though, how often should CEOs be like actively engaging on these platforms?
That's a great question, and one that we'll dive into more deeply after a quick break.
So we were just talking about how CEOs are using social media, like LinkedIn, to really connect with their audience.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the platform, right?
Right.
The frequency and timing of those communications are just as important.
Mm-hmm.
This template we're looking at suggests a certain cadence, like weekly, monthly, quarterly.
Yeah.
But is that like a hard and fast rule?
It's a good place to start, but, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
The ideal frequency really depends on a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Like what industry they're in, how big the company is, what stage of growth they're at, even like what the market's doing, and the CEO's own communication style.
So a fast-paced tech startup that's always releasing new features and updates,
Right.
they might need to communicate more often than, say, a well-established financial firm.
Exactly. That tech startup might go for weekly or even bi-weekly updates.
Yeah.
Just to keep investors and customers in the loop. While the financial firm might stick to quarterly reports and economic outlooks,
Yeah.
stuff that aligns with their long-term investment strategy.
This brings up a good point, though. How do you strike that balance between keeping people informed and overwhelming them with too much information?
Right.
Nobody wants to feel bombarded with constant updates.
It's a tough one. You want to give enough info to keep people engaged, but not so much that it becomes noise.
Right.
One strategy is to segment your audience and tailor how often you communicate based on that.
Yeah.
For example, the CEO of a wealth management firm might send weekly market summaries to clients who are actively trading, but then only provide monthly portfolio updates to those who are more long-term focused.
That's a great example of personalizing the communication based on what the audience needs.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about the why, the who, the what, and the when.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the how, tone, and style.
Okay.
This template talks about being transparent and inspirational. But what does that actually sound like? How does a CEO actually achieve that?
That's where the real art of communication comes in. It's more than just spitting out facts and figures.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with your audience on a human level. Really forging a genuine connection that resonates.
It seems like authenticity is key then. Like trying to force a style that isn't genuine would probably backfire.
Totally. A CEO's communication should reflect who they are, their values. Trying to be someone you're not just comes across as fake.
Yeah.
And could hurt your credibility.
Are there any CEOs that come to mind who you think do this really well?
Oh, yeah, there are a few. Someone like Satya Nadella at Microsoft.
Okay.
He really embodies this empathetic leadership style. He's super transparent about the challenges Microsoft is facing.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to say when they've made mistakes.
Right.
But at the same time, he's amazing at painting this compelling vision for the future. And he does it all in a very genuine, approachable way.
That's a great example. It's not just about being a charismatic speaker. It's
Right.
about being relatable.
Exactly.
Now, this template highlights the importance of feedback mechanisms.
Yeah.
Why is that so crucial, especially in today's world where trust is so easily broken?
It's super important for any leader, not just CEOs.
Right.
Feedback helps you understand how people are actually receiving your message and identify those blind spots that we all have.
Yeah.
And, course correct when you need to.
Right.
It also shows that you're open to hearing different perspectives, you're willing to learn and grow.
It's easy to, especially when you're in a position of power,
What?
to surround yourself with people who only tell you what you want to hear.
Oh, it's a huge danger getting stuck in that echo chamber
Yeah.
where everyone just agrees with you and reinforces your biases.
Makes sense.
That's why it's so important to actively seek out feedback from a lot of different sources, including people who might disagree with you.
Right.
And it's not just about getting the feedback, it's about what you do with it. Being open to criticism even when it's tough
Right.
and actually acting on it. That's what makes great leaders stand out.
Absolutely. Now, one last topic I want to touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Crisis communication.
Yeah.
Every CEO needs a plan for when things go wrong.
Right.
And these days, those crises can spread like wildfire.
They really can. Having a clear crisis communication plan is essential. It's about being ready to respond quickly and effectively when a crisis hits.
So does that mean having like pre-written statements ready to go?
It's more than just that,
Okay.
although those can be helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
It's about having a system in place,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm.
for getting information, quickly assessing the situation,
Right.
coming up with a response strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and then communicating with everyone involved.
So who should be involved in that process?
It depends on the organization and what kind of crisis it is.
Yeah.
But it usually involves the CEO, the communications team, legal counsel,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe other key executives, depending on the situation.
Right.
The goal is to have a core group that can move quickly and make decisions.
It seems like these skills are useful for more than just CEOs.
You're right. These principles of crisis communication can apply to anyone,
Yeah.
whether you're dealing with a personal crisis or a professional setback.
Mm-hmm.
Being prepared, communicating clearly and with empathy,
Right.
and taking action are important in any tough situation.
That's a really good point. Crisis communication skills are life skills.
Exactly.
We've covered so much in this part of our deep dive.
We have.
From like how often CEOs should communicate to the power of feedback and navigating crises. It's been great to hear your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Now, in the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we'll explore how CEOs can measure whether their communication is actually working and leave you with some final thoughts on how to use these principles in your own life.
Sounds good.
Whether you're leading a team or just trying to communicate better in your personal interactions. Welcome back to our deep dive on CEO communication. You know, we've been talking about everything from crafting those messages to picking the right channels and even dealing with crises. Right. But there's one crucial piece we haven't gotten to yet, and that's figuring out if all this effort is actually working.
Mm-hmm.
How do CEOs know if their communication is actually hitting the mark?
It's something people often forget about, but it's so important.
Right.
It's not enough to just count likes on a social media post or something.
Yeah.
You really have to dig deeper to see if your message is resonating and getting you the results you want.
So what are some things CEOs should be looking at besides those vanity metrics?
Yeah, you need to look at both the numbers and what people are actually saying.
Okay.
Think about employee engagement scores, customer satisfaction ratings, even how confident investors are.
Mm-hmm.
Those can tell you a lot about how your communication is impacting the people that matter most.
I bet media sentiment also plays a role.
Oh, absolutely. Especially these days when information spreads so fast online.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on media coverage and what's being said on social media can give you a sense of how the public sees your company
Mm-hmm.
and help you spot any potential problems before they blow up.
It sounds pretty complicated to measure all of this effectively.
It can be, but it's definitely worth it.
So where do you even begin?
Start by figuring out what you're actually trying to achieve with your communication.
Okay.
What are your goals?
Right.
Are you trying to boost employee morale or brand awareness or strengthen relationships with investors?
Mm-hmm.
Once you know what you're aiming for, you can pick the right metrics to track your progress.
It seems like this is something you need to do all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-and-done kind of thing.
Right.
The world of communication is constantly changing,
Mm-hmm.
so you have to keep evaluating your strategies. Get feedback, analyze data, and make adjustments along the way.
So be flexible.
Exactly.
As we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
It's CEO communication is so much more than just delivering a message.
Right.
It takes careful planning, thoughtful execution, and a willingness to keep learning and adapting.
And this isn't just for CEOs, right?
Oh, definitely not.
These principles can help anyone in any field.
Absolutely. Whether you're leading a team, presenting an idea, or even just trying to have a better conversation with your family.
I love that it's about giving everyone the tools to communicate more effectively.
Exactly.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into CEO communication. Thanks so much for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you found these insights valuable, and remember, communication is a skill that we can all keep working on.